Lumumba City glittered like a bowl of jewels poured across the land. Cars flashed by, neon signs blinked like restless spirits, and the buildings rose so high they seemed to poke the belly of the sky. But even with all its shine, the city never forgot the bones buried beneath it. People said the wind carried the voices of the old ones, voices that remembered everything. The bright lights of Lumumba fought hard against the darkness, but the darkness did not run away. It lingered at the corners of alleys, under bridges, and deep inside the places people avoided. No matter how loudly the city boomed, the old beliefs stood their ground like stubborn elders refusing to be silenced. Crowds filled the streets day and night. Sellers shouted prices, buses coughed smoke, and children chased each other through narrow paths. Yet, in the middle of all that noise, some swore they heard soft whispers, whispers that came from a time when people listened more to the earth than to their phones. Whispers that reminded the living that the land remembers. At the city's far edge lay McKenna Cemetery, a place most citizens avoided even when the sun stood bright. The iron gate was rusted, the tall grass never seemed to die, and strange coldness wrapped the place like a blanket. Parents often told their children, "Do not wander near McKenna. The spirits there do not rest." And everyone believed it, everyone except the bold or the foolish. People said that when dusk settled, the restless spirits rose and walked. Shadows moved in ways the human eye did not understand. You could feel them, even if you could not see them. And so, the living stayed away, trusting that respecting the dead was safer than waking them. Inside this city of light and shadows lived Zuri, a 21-year-old girl with eyes so bright they seemed to hold their own electricity. She walked fast, spoke fast, and dreamed even faster. But her heart, her heart was hungry. Hungry for comfort, hungry for attention, hungry for the kind of life she saw on social media where people smiled in expensive clothes and lived like life owed them blessings. Her family's small two-room apartment was always filled with noise, pots clattering, radio humming, laughter mixing with sighs of exhaustion. They loved each other deeply, but the struggle was heavy. Money slipped through their fingers like sand, and every day was a balancing act between hope and reality. Zuri looked around that small home and felt trapped. She wanted more than hand-me-down dresses and crowded buses. She wanted luxury, shiny phones, designer shoes, the kind of fame that made people whisper her name in admiration. Every time she scrolled through her phone, her desire grew sharper, cutting away at whatever patience she had left. Her aunt watched her quietly, eyes soft but worried. The older woman had lived long enough to see how greed could twist a young person's heart. She often told Zuri, "Child, the world will give you shortcuts, but every shortcut takes something from you." Zuri usually rolled her eyes. "Auntie, it's not that serious," she would say. "You worry too much." But her aunt's eyes held a sadness Zuri didn't notice. "Greed blinds people," she whispered one night. "And blind people walk right into spirits they should never meet." Still, Zuri brushed off the warnings like dust on her shoes. She believed the city rewarded the bold, not the cautious. To her, old teachings were nothing but stories meant to scare children, not someone like her, someone born for bigger things. What her family didn't see was the quiet ache Zuri carried. Behind her mocking smile was fear, fear of being stuck forever, fear of never shining, fear that her dreams were bigger than her destiny. And so, she kept chasing more, not knowing that every step toward quick riches pushed her closer to a darkness that had been waiting for her name. The day had barely begun when Zuri's hands shook over the empty register. The cosmetic shop manager shook his head, his voice like a closing gate. "Zuri, I'm sorry. We cannot keep you. Business is slowing, and you're ours." "I understand," she muttered, though her throat felt dry and heavy. The words tasted like ash. Losing the job was more than losing money. It was losing the last fragile sense of control she had over her life. She stepped outside, the city's clamor hitting her like a wave. The markets roared, buses hissed, and hawkers' cries cut through her thoughts. But none of it mattered. What mattered was the emptiness gnawing at her chest. Her phone buzzed incessantly. Pictures of friends floated across the screen. Laughter, glittering sneakers, expensive dinners. Zuri stared at them, feeling small, invisible. Each flash of wealth they displayed was a needle twisting into her heart. She wanted to scream at them, to tell them it was all fake, but the shame was already blooming inside her like a thorn, sharp and unyielding. Rumors began to swirl, carried by voices on the street and whispers online. A girl dares to spend a night in McKenna Cemetery for $5,000. People said the challenge was dangerous, a test of courage, and some said it was cursed. The name at the center of it all traveled faster than the wind. Mr. Kamau, a man whose wealth seemed endless, was offering this prize. And the city, hungry for spectacle, passed the story along in every market, every crowded street, every glowing screen. Zuri's pulse raced. Here was a chance, a reckless, impossible chance, to seize the life she wanted. Her mind spun with visions of quick money, of freedom from small apartments and borrowed clothes. The temptation was fire, the kind that licked at the soul and dared her to burn. At home, her aunt's voice trembled with fear. "Zuri, you must not. The spirits, they will punish." "I'm not afraid," Zuri said sharply, eyes flashing. "This is just old stories for old people. I want what is mine. Why should I be afraid of shadows?" Her aunt's lips pressed together, sorrowful and powerless. The air seemed to thicken as Zuri stepped toward the unknown. City lights shimmered behind her, bright and unaware, while something older, unseen, began to watch. She arrived at a glass-fronted office in the city center. The door opened, revealing a man whose smile was cold enough to freeze sunlight. Mr. Kamau's eyes held calculation and patience. "Ah, Zuri," he said smoothly, voice like silk wrapped around steel. "I hear you are ambitious, bold. That is good. Very good." She swallowed, nodding, though unease prickled her spine. "You see," he continued, leaning back, "McKenna Cemetery is challenging. Some say haunted. But I want to prove that these old fears are exaggerated. You could help with that. And of course, there is a reward." Zuri's eyes glittered with desire. $5,000. Enough to taste a life beyond this city's small apartments. The land, it is sacred, she thought, but the hunger for wealth drowned the caution. "I will do it," she said before her heart could argue. Mr. Kamau's smile widened. "Excellent. You understand the terms? One night. Proof of courage. Respectable, of course, for the spirits." She ignored the unspoken weight in his words, the legacy of ancestors buried beneath every stone of the cemetery. She signed the contract, the pen scratching across paper like a heartbeat marking her choice. With each stroke, her future intertwined with forces she did not yet understand. When she left the office, the city's lights seemed dimmer, as if the air itself had shifted. Somewhere at the edge of the streets, beyond neon and noise, the shadows waited, patient and watchful, for the girl who thought she could outrun the past. The moment Zuri signed the contract, the city seemed to take notice. Within hours, her daring act had spread like wildfire. Phones flashed in every hand, posts and videos buzzed across social media, turning her challenge into a spectacle. "The girl who dares to sleep in McKenna Cemetery for $5,000, the messages screamed. Everyone had an opinion, and everyone wanted to watch. Some cheered her on, clapping their hands for bravery, laughing at the thrill. "Finally, someone bold enough to risk it all," they shouted. In crowded markets and noisy bus stations, people whispered her name with admiration, delighting in the chaos she had created. The city's hunger for drama embraced her like an unrelenting drumbeat. Others, however, mocked her desperation. "She is just hungry for attention," some said. "Look at her, thinking she can outrun spirits for money." Even strangers on the streets would shake their heads, some sneering behind their hands, convinced she had overstepped the bounds of reason. Zuri's face flushed with a mix of pride and irritation, unaware that the whispers of warning carried more weight than the laughter of fools. Elders of the city, however, did not laugh. They shook their heads with grave concern. "Child, do not disturb the resting souls. The dead do not forget, and they do not forgive," they warned. Their voices were steady, heavy with the weight of centuries, carrying truths that the city's neon lights could not illuminate. At home, her aunt's hands folded in prayer. Smoke curled from the small incense pot, winding like invisible ladders to the ancestors above. "Protect her, spirits of our lineage. Shield her heart from greed and folly," she whispered, her voice trembling yet steadfast. The room smelled of smoke and earth, old prayers weaving through the air, seeking the protection of those unseen but powerful. The next evening, Zuri arrived at the cemetery gate, her phone live and recording every step. "Welcome to McKenna Cemetery, the ultimate challenge," she declared with a wide grin, holding the camera toward her face. The city watched her daring entrance in real time. Lights glinted off her gear as she walked past the rusted gates, confidence radiating from every step. Yet as she entered, the city's roar faded behind her. Horns, chatter, and music dissolved into silence, leaving only the hush of the sacred grounds. The air felt different, heavier, colder, yet not entirely cold. She inhaled deeply. The smell of earth and old stones filled her nostrils, a scent that spoke of lives long ended and stories unspoken. The weight of generations pressed down on her, unseen eyes tracking each move, judging each heartbeat. The cemetery was no longer a space of stone and dirt, it was alive with memory and expectation. Zuri's confident smile began to falter as a shiver ran through her. Her phone flickered, the screen jumping and glitching as though something unseen were trying to reach her through it. Then whispers threaded through the darkness, soft and sibilant, calling her name, "Zuri! Zuri!" The air grew colder, though no wind stirred. Shadows danced just beyond the light of her phone, shapes forming where life should not tread. Her pulse quickened. For the first time, she felt it, the sharp bite of fear sinking into her spine. Her bravado wavered, the city's cheers fading like distant echoes. Something ancient was here, watching, waiting, reminding her that some challenges were not meant to be taken lightly. And in that moment, Zuri understood, she was no longer in control. The cemetery, the spirits, and the unseen watchers had claimed her attention, and soon they would demand much more than courage. A pale figure rose between the graves, its form flickering like smoke in the wind. Zuri's eyes widened as she held her phone tighter, though she knew her camera could never capture what her soul felt. The figure drifted silently, each step hovering just above the earth, yet leaving a coldness that touched every bone in her body. The figure's eyes were sad, pools of sorrow that seemed to carry centuries of unspoken pain. Zuri felt a chill deep inside her chest as those eyes met hers, reflecting a life stolen too soon, a story that never reached the world of the living. Who are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling in the stillness. The spirit did not answer in words, but Zuri felt its presence as neither angry nor gentle, only lost, wandering between realms. It was a soul suspended in time, a warning wrapped in fragility. Zuri's legs felt rooted to the soil, curiosity and terror wrestling within her. She wanted to approach, yet every instinct screamed to run. The cemetery itself seemed to awaken. Trees leaned closer, their branches murmuring ancient incantations. Shadows twisted, forming shapes of forgotten ancestors, and the wind carried soft cries that sounded like lullabies and laments together. The very air hummed with expectation, as if every grave had remembered its dead and now watched her intrusion. Then the visions began. Faces and moments unfolded in the dim glow. She saw herself lying to friends for small gains, promises broken like dry twigs beneath careless feet. She watched the hurt in their eyes, their trust dissolving, and the shame in her own reflection. Every betrayal, every selfish act, replayed in merciless clarity. The faces of those she had used for money, the smiles she had borrowed and discarded, pressed against her mind. She felt the weight of each moment, the small pain she had inflicted growing into a mountain of consequence. "This is your heart," a voice whispered through the wind. "See what greed makes of it." The spirit story revealed its own life, a mirror of what Zuri might become if her path remained unchanged. Nafula's death, caused by someone who valued wealth over honor, echoed a warning. Each detail of the past reflected a possible future, one where Zuri's life, like the spirit's, could be claimed by choices she failed to understand. Then came the truth about the man who had set the challenge. Nafula's eyes glimmered with bitter knowledge. "He seeks to destroy what you cannot protect," the voice said, and Zuri understood. The graves were in danger, sacred places meant to honor generations. Mr. Kamau's promise of reward was a trap, a lure for desperation. Zuri's chest tightened as realization struck. She was not the hero, not the brave challenger, she was bait. Her longing for easy money had placed her at the center of someone else's plan, a plan to disturb and profit from the resting dead. Fear and understanding collided in her heart, leaving her trembling yet awake to the weight of her choices. In that moment, the cemetery felt alive with judgment, sorrow, and power. Zuri knew she stood at a threshold. One step further, and she could fall into ruin. One step back, and perhaps the spirits might guide her toward redemption. The night thickened over McKenna Cemetery, folding the city's chaos into a heavy silence. From the shadows between graves, spirits began to rise, one by one, their forms shimmering like silver smoke in the moonlight. The air grew dense, vibrating with the whispers of ancestors long departed. Far off, Lumumba City's neon lights flickered as if struggling to hold back the darkness. Windows glowed and dimmed, street lamps winked in hesitation, and for a moment, the modern world seemed fragile against the ancient power awakening below. Zuri stood frozen, her heart hammering. She realized she was caught between two worlds at war, the bustling city she adored and the silent, enduring magic of the ancestors. She felt the weight of every grave beneath her feet, the stories of generations pressing into her conscience. Old magic stirred in the soil, in the trees, in the air itself. Roots shifted, unseen eyes watched, and the sacred ground whispered in a language older than stone. The spiritual storm gathered above her head, lightningless but charged with judgment, with expectation, with the weight of history. Above her, the night sky sealed itself in darkness. Stars vanished, swallowed by a curtain that felt alive. Shadows began to lift from graves, elongated and twisting, forming figures whose presence spoke of authority and sorrow. The ground shivered beneath her, trembling like an angry beast warning her to respect the earth. The spirits circled, a ring of watchful ancestors surrounding her. Their voices rose in unison, accusations echoing like deep drums. You have disrespected. You have coveted. You have abandoned humility. You have betrayed your lineage. Each word struck her like fire, searing the pride she had carried so carelessly. Suddenly, Zuri felt herself pulled forward, into a vision realm shaped by ancestral power. The air shimmered, the ground beneath dissolving into mist. She saw her family at home, their tears falling silently, their fear piercing her soul. Her aunt's hands were clasped in prayer, her uncle's shoulders bowed in helpless worry. A vision of herself appeared, older, wealthy, but hollow. Her eyes were empty, her smile forced, surrounded by gold and silence, loved by none. She felt the weight of a life taken by greed. Then, Nafula's death replayed before her eyes, the tragic end of the girl whose spirit had been guiding her. The same greed, the same recklessness, had led to loss and sorrow. The ancestors' voices wove into a chorus, comparing Zuri's path to Mr. Kamau's selfish ambition. See how your desires may mirror his. Your greed may destroy what you love. Learn, child, or become the next cautionary tale. Zuri's knees buckled, her breath trembling as the vision pressed upon her. The line between fear and understanding blurred, the city and the spirits, the living and the dead, all demanded she reckon with her heart. Zuri's knees buckled, and her chest heaved. The weight of every choice she had made, the lies, the greed, the careless betrayals, pressed upon her like a mountain. Her spirit trembled, a fragile bird caught in a storm, as the truth unfolded before her eyes. "What have I done?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the low hum of the awakened cemetery. For the first time, her tears fell freely, unbidden and unashamed. They streaked her face, glinting like pearls in the faint ghostly light. She cried not for the fear of spirits, not for the lost money, but for the hollow girl she had become, a girl who had abandoned kindness for fleeting wealth. "I am sorry," she sobbed. "I am so sorry for all I've taken, for all I've broken." Her confession poured forth, the little lies to friends, the cruelty she had disguised as ambition, the pride that had blinded her to the values her aunt had tried to teach. She admitted to the spirits the greed that had hollowed her heart, the morals she had ignored, and the love she had abandoned in pursuit of illusions. The spirits circled silently, observing her without judgment or words. The wind carried the whispers of the ancestors, but no voice spoke. It was as if the very air held its breath, waiting for her heart to speak more loudly than her lips ever could. Then, a figure stepped forward from the mist. Nafula was no longer a ghost swaying in sorrow. She was a guardian, her presence radiant and commanding. "Ancestors," she said softly, "she has seen. She has repented. I plead for her mercy." The ancestors paused, their shadows still and their energy heavy. Zuri's heart thumped as the silent test began. Every instinct, every word unspoken, every tiny flicker of her true self was under scrutiny. Nafula's single tear glowed in the moonless night, falling and touching the earth. The air shifted. A warmth rippled through the cold tension, a small mercy threading through the storm. Suddenly, the earth split beneath Zuri's feet. Dark hands, swirling like smoke, reached up from the underworld, grasping, pulling. "No. Please, no!" she cried, feeling herself drawn toward endless shadows. She fell to her knees, surrendering the pride she had clung to for so long. "I will change. I will honor life. I promise." Her voice rang through the spirit realm, echoing like a bell through the darkness. The shadows hesitated, the hands paused, and the spirits leaned closer, listening as her plea carried the weight of truth. "I will live differently. I will choose honesty, respect, and heart over greed. Let me begin again." The cemetery seemed to hold its breath, the storm stilling just enough to let Zuri's words settle, imprinting her promise upon the land, the spirits, and herself. The dark hands withdrew slowly, sinking back into the earth as if the underworld itself had heard Zuri's plea and chosen mercy. The cracks in the soil sealed with a soft rumble, and the ground, once alive with wrath, became still. A gentle warmth touched Zuri's wrist, and she looked down to see a glowing mark etched into her skin, a symbol of the ancestors' vigilance and her second chance. Dawn's first light painted the cemetery in soft gold. The spirits, once circling her with anger and judgment, drifted back into the shimmer of the rising sun, their whispers fading into the morning air. Zuri's body shook, every fiber alive with the memory of the night, the weight of her mistakes, and the new understanding that coursed through her veins. She rose slowly, her eyes wide with awe and humility. She walked silently back through the cemetery, each step careful, each breath a prayer of gratitude. The world seemed quieter now, not because it had changed, but because she had. When she reached the apartment, her aunt was waiting, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, ancestors," she whispered, her hands trembling as they touched Zuri's glowing wrist. Zuri fell to her knees, her voice soft and sincere. "Auntie, I am so sorry, for all the pride, the greed, the disrespect. I will live differently. I promise." Humility settled over her like morning dew, refreshing and gentle, washing away the girl who had sought wealth without respect. Later, she faced Mr. Kamau with steady eyes and a heart fortified by truth. The cameras captured every word as she spoke. "This cemetery is sacred. Your plans to destroy it end today. You have used our youth, our traditions, and our community for your gain, but we will no longer remain silent." The city listened, shock turning to action. Citizens gathered, united in protecting the ancestral grounds. Murmurs of outrage grew to shouts of determination, and soon, McKenna Cemetery was declared a protected territory. Zuri felt the ancestors' presence again, a quiet affirmation in the wind, their power alive in every leaf and stone. She had survived, but more importantly, she had learned, changed, and begun to honor both life and legacy. The community gathered at the edge of McKenna Cemetery as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. Elders, draped in woven cloths and beads, formed a circle around the sacred ground, their voices rising in chants that trembled with power. The drums beat slowly, calling the ancestors to witness. Children and young adults watched silently, feeling the weight of history pressing upon the soil beneath their feet. An elder stepped forward, his hands raised toward the sky. "Nafula, daughter of our land, we honor you. We bring you peace, we tell your story, and we restore your name to its rightful place." Smoke from burning sage curled into the twilight, winding between the graves like gentle fingers, carrying the prayers upward. As the ritual continued, the wind shifted, warm and soft, touching Zuri's wrist. The mark glowed faintly, humming with calm and release. She pressed her palm against it, feeling Nafula's spirit finally free, her sorrow transformed into quiet light. Zuri stood taller now, a new humility settled into her bones. She began to walk a path rooted in truth, guiding her actions with care and honor. "I will teach," she whispered. "I will honor our roots, and show the youth the cost of chasing without respect." She worked among the children of the city, sharing stories of greed and consequences, of respect for ancestors and community. Her life became a living reminder. The past must be honored, and second chances are precious gifts. And the elders' voices echoed in the wind, a final lesson for all who would listen. Greed opens the door to shadows and danger. Tradition holds power that modern life cannot break. The ancestors guide those who honor their roots. And what you chase wrongly will one day chase you. The people of Lumumba City left the ceremony quietly, carrying the story of Nafula and Zuri's transformation, a moral etched in their hearts like the glowing mark on a wrist, a beacon for generations to come. Zuri walked through the bustling streets of Lumumba City, her steps quieter than usual, her eyes reflecting a newfound calm. She no longer sought the glitter of fast wealth, nor the admiration of careless peers. Instead, her presence itself became a lesson to all who noticed. People whispered when she passed, observing how a life once led by greed could be transformed by respect, humility, and courage. At the marketplace, children paused to watch her help an elder carry heavy baskets. Young women and men exchanged glances, understanding without words that wealth without honor was hollow. One young boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, pointing toward Zuri. "Mama, see. She is rich in heart, even if she carries no gold." By the gates of McKenna Cemetery, passers-by slowed, their voices soft. "May our hearts be clean, like hers," they murmured, blessing both the living and the spirits resting in peace. The stories of Zuri and Nafula flowed through the community, like wind stirring leaves, gentle but powerful. And in the quiet corners of the city, elders repeated the caution they had whispered for generations. "Remember, what you chase wrongly may chase you. Honor the past, respect the living, and never disturb the sacred. Those who forget these truths may awaken shadows best left asleep." Zuri, walking beneath the rising sun, felt the weight and warmth of that wisdom. Her life had become a living story, a bridge between the old and the new, a reminder to all of Lumumba City that true riches are measured in honor, not coins.